Welcome, bike. Tonight, we drift farther back than we've ever gone before. Beyond pyramids, beyond empires, back to the very breath of civilization itself. So, dim the lights, let your bodies sink a little deeper into rest, and imagine standing barefoot at the edge of a river older than memory. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of mud and reeds. The world is still young. You look around, and there are no cities yet. No marble, no metal, no crown. Just a slow, patient world waiting to be shaped. Two great rivers wind through a plain of gold, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This is Mesopotamia, the land between rivers. And somewhere in this gentle heat, something begins to change. Imagine the hush before the idea of home existed. For thousands of years, people wandered. But here, the rivers whisper something new. They flood, they recede, and they leave behind earth richer than anywhere else. The first humans notice, they stay. They press seeds into that soft earth, and for the first time, they wait. Somewhere near what we now call southern Iraq, a cluster of mud brick homes huddles by the water. Smoke curls upward in the cool of evening. There are no kings yet, no walls, no writing, only the first heartbeat of civilization, steady, fragile, and astonishing. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it, the sound of hands shaping clay, the rhythm of a dream taking form. And that dream would one day be called Sumer. They didn't know they were making history. To them, it was survival. But through their daily axe planting, building, recording, they unknowingly carved a blueprint for every civilization to come. A farmer kneels by a canal, his hand sinking into the wet earth. He begins to understand patterns, floods, seasons, harvests. That understanding becomes memory. Memory becomes knowledge. And so, humanity learns its first lesson from the land. That chaos can be ordered. In time, small huts grow into villages, and villages into something the world had never seen before. Cities, Uruk, Yor, Lagash, each glowing like a lantern in the vast plain. At their centers rise vast temple ziggurats, tepped mountains of baked brick stretching toward the heavens. The Sumerians were farmers and builders, yes, but more than that, they were dreamers. They gazed at the stars and mapped them into gods. They pressed thoughts into clay tablets, inventing writing so their words might outlast their breath. Think of that for a moment. The first time a thought was made permanent. A reed pressed into soft clay. A mark, a symbol, a record of being alive. It's strange to think that everything our laws, our art, our cities began with mud. Mud shaped into bricks, bricks shaped into homes. Homes shaped into hope. When the rivers flooded, they built canals together. When crops failed, they shared grain. For the first time, humanity existed as asterisk. We asterisk. A shared dream, and that was the true miracle of Sumer. So now, close your eyes. The night grows deeper. The river hums softly. You can almost see a single torch flickering on the wall of Uruk, and if you listen carefully, you might hear the first whisper of humanity's eternal song, the will to create, to remember, to belong. It beganere, between two rivers, with us. Listen. Can you hear it? The sound of water flowing in the dark. Two great rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, winding through a sleeping world. They move like veins through the flesh of the earth, silver and slow beneath the moon. Between them lies a plain wide, silent, shimmering with heat by day and whispering with wind by night. These rivers don't rush. They breathe. Each curve is a sigh. Each ripple, a memory of rain from mountains far away. In spring, they swell proud and restless, and when the waters spread, flooding the land, something ancient awakens. Not yet men, but wanderers, hunters and gatherers. Quiet watchers of the wild. They come to the edge of this flooded plain and see a miracle. Where the water retreats, The soil shines black and rich. The flood brings not death, but life. The rivers are givers and takers. They demand patience, reverence, and so, in the hush between their banks, humanity begins its first conversation with nature. A whisper at first to hand, pressing a seed into soft earth. A prayer that the water will return but not destroy. Here, in this gentle act of faith, civilization begins to breathe. They come not as conquerors, but as dreamers. Families walking barefoot through warm dust, finding this place, this land between rivers. They don't yet call it Sumer. They simply stop moving. It begins with stillness and night, when someone notices that seeds left near the water have sprouted. Tiny green blades piercing the mud like little miracles. They watch. They wait. They begin to understand the rhythm. Flood, growth, harvest, rest. The floodplain becomes home. Huts of reeds rise like nests. Smoke from fires curls into the dawn. They begin to shape the land, digging channels to guide the water with crude tools of wood and bone. Their hands trace the lines that will one day become maps, but a single flood too high, and the huts vanish. A season too dry, and the crops shrivel. The rivers teach them balance, cooperation. The first settlers are not builders, yet they are listeners. Slowly, the land begins to change. The reeds give way to fields. The hunters trade their spears for plows. At dawn, oxen pull wooden plows through damp soil. Women scatter grain from baskets, their eyes full of hope. The Sumerians, though they don't yet know that, name our inventing tomorrow. They tame water with patience and unity. Villages grow around canals, veins of silver cutting through the earth, guiding life where it is needed most. From the floods came hunger and hope, and the first dream of control. This is where the great story begins. Not in palaces, but in mud, faith, and the quiet persistence of the human hand. From the fields rise the first signs of permanence. Walls of mud brick, small temples, storerooms heavy with grain. A village becomes a town. A town becomes a city. And with the city comes memory. They call one Eridu the sacred mound, another Uruk-Vask and proud, and then Uruway. Within these walls, rules form. Leaders rise. Trade begins, and language finds shape. Carved into wet clay with reeds, they invent writing not to tell stories, but to count, to record, to keep the river's memory alive. Each tablet a whisper of order, each mark the heartbeat of civilization. Day breaks softly over Sumer. Mist hangs above the canals as farmers guide oxen beneath a white sun. Potters shape clay on spinning wheels. Weavers sit in doorways, their looms clicking like gentle rain. At dusk, families gather under the fading light, watching the river gleam gold, then silver, then black. Life is simple, cyclical, and beautiful. Each dawn the beginning, each flood the reminder of fragility. Listen again to the quiet hum of the river. It has not changed. From water came order. From mud came meaning. They didn't conquer their world. They cultivated it. This is the story of hands patient, ordinary, steady hands that learned to trust the flow of nature. The people of Sumer didn't dream of empires yet. They dreamed of safety, of harvest, of children who would see another season. They looked upon the rivers not as boundaries, but as lifelines. Even now, we can still hear their song, the soft murmur of irrigation channels, the rustle of reeds, the pulse of life itself. They were the first to turn nature into a neighbor, and in doing so, they created us all. In time, their cities would rise like prayers of clay. But that is a story for another night. For now, the rivers sleep. Close your eyes. Hear the slow current. Feel the pulse of the land that first dreamed of forever. Do you hear it? That faint, endless hush beneath the stars. It is the sound of our ancestors, still moving, still wandering through the tall grass of forgotten ages. For thousands of years, humankind lived by the rhythm of the chase, following the herds, the rains, and the light of the sun. They were children of the earth, never belonging to one place, yet belonging everywhere at once. And then ... Something changed. No one can say when, or where, or why, with certainty. But there came a morning, somewhere between the Tigris and the Euphrates, when a family looked at the water and thought, here. The rivers glistened like silver snakes beneath the rising light. The soil was dark, soft, generous. It cradled their footprints instead of swallowing them. As the floods receded, they left behind a miracle. A thin layer of life itself. Grain sprouted where the waters had kissed the ground. The people watched, awed and uncertain, as green spread across the mud. They did not yet call it farming. They called it hope. And so, for the first time, they stayed. They built fires, but did not need to be moved. They dug holes not for roots to gather, but for seeds to rest. In their stillness, something vast began to breathe. A new rhythm, not of feet across plains, but of hands shaping clay. From that stillness, the first idea of permanence was born, and with it, the first city. The rivers taught them everything. They learned when to sow, when to wait, when to pray for the flood, and when to fear it. As their harvests grew, so did their courage. Little clusters of reed huts became neighborhoods of mud brick. Walls rose. Ovens smoked. Laughter echoed through courtyards. And slowly, quietly, a new world emerged. One that would never again vanish with the seasons. Uruk. Even the name carries the weight of beginnings. Imagine it at dawn. A low sun spilling gold over flat rooftops. Thin columns of smoke drifting toward the pale sky. The smell of baked clay and sweet date wine. The hum of thousands of lives waking at once. Farmers, potters, priests, and children. At the city's heart, a great temple gleamed, its walls still damped from yesterday's river clay. Around it, the city pulsed narrow lanes twisting like veins, leading to small markets where voices murmured like bees. Uruk was more than a home. It was an idea made solid, humanity's first great act of architecture. But it was not alone. Southward, Yoshimud beside the river's curve, its ziggurat rising like a stairway of fire in the setting sun. Eastward, Lagash and Eridu grew from the same clay. They were sisters, bound by trade, by faith, by the eternal gift of the rivers. Each city had its own heartbeat, its own dream. Together, they formed the first constellation of civilization, and at the center of every city, a mountain made by human hands rose. Brick upon brick, each one shaped by the same river that had given them life. The people stacked their devotion higher and higher, toward the realm of the gods. Step by step, they climbed, not in haste, but in reverence. The ziggurat was a bridge between the dust of mortals and the heavens above. Even now, the ziggurat of Yo still stands, its ancient bricks whispering of prayers carried upward through the ages. But most of life unfolded in small, gentle acts. Morning came with the sound of grinding grain. Women shaped dough, their hands dusted white. Children fetched water in clay pots. Men led oxen to the fields, where irrigation channels glittered like ribbons of glass. By midday, the market stirred with the smell of roasted fish and honey. And when the sun slipped low, old men told stories of the gods who walked in the beginning. Civilization moved with the same grace as water finding its way home. But peace requires guidance. When thousands live together, someone must speak for them. At first, it was the priests. Then came the Lugal, the great man, the king. He was not chosen by force, but by need, to settle disputes, to organize workers, to defend the walls. The earliest kings ruled not as tyrants, but as caretakers, servants of the gods, bound to keep the rhythm of the world in balance. And though we remember names like Gilgamesh, it is the nameless who truly built those cities. The diggers of canals, the carriers of clay, the mothers who kept the fires alive. So here, beneath the same stars you see tonight, the first great cities breathed life into the idea of us. Walls became homes. Homes became nations. And humanity, for the first time, found its rhythm. They learned that strength was not found in solitude, but in community, and that even mud when shaped by many hands, could touch eternity. But soon, they would discover a way to remember, to make memory itself immortal. The world's first words were about to be written. Before words were written, they were carried by wind and memory. Every story was a breath told by one voice, remembered by another, then lost to time. Lullabies vanished with the mothers who sang them. Promises faded as generations passed. The world was full of sound, but none of it could stay. In the beginning, memory was the only book. Campfire smoke curled beneath the stars as hunters told of their journeys. Elders spoke of floods and gods, of beasts that once roamed the plains. But when those elders were gone, so were their stories scattered like dust. And then, in the land between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, humanity decided that memory wasn't enough. It happened slowly, almost shyly, as all great things do. Among the fields of barley and reeds, people began to wonder if a thought could be shaped, if sound itself could be captured, if time could be tamed. The rivers murmured their eternal song, and somewhere along their muddy banks, a new kind of silence began, the silence of someone thinking, how can I make a word stay? That question would change the world forever. It began not with poetry, but with grain. In the bustling cities of Sumeruak, Yor, and Lagashlif, pulsed with trade and harvest. Farmers brought baskets of barley to the temples, where priests counted and stored them. The priests used small clay tokens at first shapes, for cattle, bread, or jars of oil. Each token meant something. A promise. Record. But as trade grew, the tokens multiplied. And one day, someone pressed a token into wet clay. A shape was left behind. A mark. A memory made visible. That single act of hand. A reed. A lump of clay was the birth of writing. The marks grew more intricate, each one pressed by a stylus cut into a small wedge. Wedge after wedge, line after line. This new language took form. We call it cuneiform, from the Latin for wedge-shaped. Listen to it in your mind. The soft click of stylus on clay, the quiet breathing of the scribe. At first, these marks were practical. Tallies of grain, lists of cattle. But soon, something changed. The symbols began to sing. A mark no longer meant just to goats. It could mean gift. It could mean journey. It could mean love. And from that moment on, humanity had given thought a body. The world had its first written language. They were not warriors or kings, but without them, no civilization could have survived. The scribes, at dawn, they sat on red mats, tablets of wet clay before them. Teachers walked among them, speaking softly. Press lightly. The wedge must breathe. A student's hand trembled as he formed his first signed grain. Then another tempo. Then life. To learn writing took years of discipline, but for those who mastered it, the reward was divine. To speak to the future. By midday, the scribes moved to temple halls, copying lists, prayers, contracts, and dreams. In their hands, chaos became order, memory became record, and civilization learned to think beyond its moment. They were the bridge between silence and eternity. At first, they wrote to count, then to remember. But soon, they wrote to dream. One evening, a scribe pressed something new into the clay. Not numbers, not goods, but feelings, stories. He wrote of gods who shaped men from dust, of floods that swept away worlds, of kings who sought eternal life, and from his stylus flowed the epic of Gilgamesh's story of friendship and grief, of a man who searched for immortality only to find it in the memory of his friend. Those tablets, hardened by the sun, would one day be buried by Sandan, yet 5,000 years later, they would be found again, their words still clear, their tears still fresh. Writing had grown wings. It could fly through time. The Sumerians believed this power was a gift from Nisaba, the goddess of writing. In her temples, every word was a bridge between heaven and earth, between the living and the eternal. A tablet could carry a blessing, a law, a song, and once inscribed, it belonged to forever. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell, but the words remained, a silent library waiting beneath the dunes. When archaeologists brushed away the dust in the 19th century, they found the voices of the world's first storytellers. Traders bargaining over grain, lovers whispering in cuneiform, kings declaring laws. And when those words were read again, it was as if the Sumerians had spoken one last time, a soft whisper through millennia. I was here. I wrote this. Remember me. And we did. Every story you've ever heard, every poem, every love note, every message you've ever sent all began here. In the mud of Sumer, their clay became our paper. Their dream to make memory last became the foundation of civilization itself. Words turned us into a species that could not only live, but remember living. Now, the night grows quiet again. In the still air of the temple, rows of clay tablets rest beneath the stars, their meaning eternal. Somewhere out there, the first words ever written are still whispering through time. Listen closely. Can you hear them? A faint rhythm, like rain upon clay. They whisper. We began this. We made thought immortal. And beneath those same stars, the story of humanity continues. By word, memory by memory, dream by dream. First light spills across the plain. A gold so ancient it seems to remember every dawn before it. The bricks of the city glow with the warmth of honey and dust. From the high ziggurat at the city's heart, long shadows stretch like fingers, awaking the narrow streets below. You can almost hear it. The quiet shuffle of sandals, the creak of a wooden door, the low murmur of someone by the courtyard well. This is the city of clay. You're 5,000 years ago, and already it lives and breathes, much as we do today. A baker kneels beside his small oven, coaxing a fire to life. The smell of warm, nutty barley bread drifts through the air. Children stir under woven blankets, blinking at the morning light. In another house, a potter runs a hand over cool clay jars that harden through the night. There are no engines, no iron or glass, yet the city hums, not with noise, but with the rhythm of life itself. From above, the streets look like veins, carrying the pulse of 1,000 hearts. Each house is built of sun-baked mud brick, the very earth shaped by human hands. Listen closely. You might hear the splash of a jar being filled at the well, the laughter of girls carrying baskets of dates, or the quiet chant of a priest from the temple stairs. It is morning in Sumer, and for the first time in history, people are not just wandering, they are staying. They are living together, weaving, baking, building, believing. Imagine walking these streets. The ground is firm and dry. A donkey passes, its bells tinkling. A woman waves from a rooftop, hanging cloth, too dry in the sun. The air is filled with the scent of fish and fresh grain from the market ahead. The world feels young, not primitive, but pure. Here, the air itself holds memory. It carries the echo of the Euphrates River and the whisper of reeds in the wind. This isn't just a city. It's one of the first versions of civilization itself. As morning grows brighter, the streets fill. A shepherd leads his flock through the gates. Scribes walk in pairs, clay tablets tucked under their arms. In a cool courtyard, a child plays with a small clay figurine. It breathes in sunlight and exhales life. Thus begins our quiet walk through the streets of Sumer. We will linger where life unfolds, the homes, the markets, and the temples. Because history isn't just about kings or battles, it's made of moments like these. A loaf of bread, a smile between strangers, a prayer whispered into the morning air. Let us walk the streets of the first cities and remember what it felt like to be human for the very first time. At the cities we built, the rules we lived by, it all had to start somewhere. Imagine a time before memory, on a vast, sun-baked plain. Walls are rising, brick by brick, dream by dream. In the first light of dawn, a new figure walks those walls. He's not a god, not entirely a man. He's Akin, the first king. Before crowns, the priest spoke for the people. The temple stood higher than any palace. The priest measured the grain, blessed the floods, and whispered to the unseen. But as cities swelled and voices multiplied, faith alone couldn't hold them together. The guardians of the gods became guardians of men. A new idea was whispered on the wind. A city needs a shepherd, someone to lead the flocks of humanity through flood and famine. And so, the first rulers stepped forward. Among them, one rose brightest, Gilgamesh, king of Uruk. 2/3 god, 1/3 man. He built the city's mighty walls, a testament to his labor. His palace wasn't marble and gold, but clay and cedar, buzzing with the work of scribes, recording the flow of grain, births, and trade. The Sumerian king wasn't born to be adored. He was born to build. He organized armies to guard the canals, planned irrigation, and judged disputes. He was the axis around which the city turned. Standing on the ramparts, the king wore not jewels, but the dust of the fields. For him, the wall was his crown. His power came from duty. At dawn, he walked through the temple, listening to the quiet hum of his city awakening, the scratch of a stylus on clay, the bray of donkeys. This was his kingdom. Life, order, rhythm. Kingship wasn't a conquest. It was a covenant. When floods came, the king took the blame. When the harvest was good, he called it mercy. And at night, looking over the flickering torches of Uruk, he stood between the infinite heavens and the quiet earth, a single man holding them together. But no city survives on walls alone. It survives on something invisible. Rules. The world of the Sumerians was wild and unpredictable. So, between the ziggurat and the marketplace, an idea more powerful than any tool was born law. It began as whispers in temple courts. A merchant cheated. A farmer wronged. A scribe would press the outcome into wet clay. The world's first recorded justice. These tablets tell stories of accountability. To the Sumerians, justice was divine order reflected on earth. To cheat your neighbor was to offend the gods. Soon, entire codes emerged, simple yet clear. If a man builds a house and it collapses, killing the owner, the builder must pay with his own life. It wasn't gentle, but it was structured. In those rules lay a truth that outlasted empires. Survival isn't enough. Justice is required. Imagine holding one of those clay tablets, still soft from the scribe's hand. You'd be holding the first shape of fairness, the first belief that we can live in balance. Perhaps that is the real legacy of Sumer, not their walls, but their attempt to make life fair. When a civilization writes its rules, it begins to believe it can be better than chaos, and that belief is something we still chase today. And now, traveler of time, our quiet journey through the Sumerian world drifts toward its end. The fires on the ziggurat burn low. The markets have fallen silent. Somewhere, in a narrow alley of clay and shadow, a lamp flickers once and fades. The night has claimed the city of yore. And yet, not even time itself can claim what they built. Because what the Sumerians left behind was not just walls or words. It was a rhythm, a way of being human, a soft heartbeat that still hums beneath the floor of every civilization that came after. It began with rivers, with mud and hope, with hands pressing reeds into wet clay, and hearts whispering prayers to the sky. They were the first to look at the chaos of the world and try to make sense of it, to name it, to draw lines, meaning and purpose. From the floods and the stars, every city we know, every law we follow, every record we write, is in some way an echo of that first attempt at order. They gave shape to memory. They gave silence a language. They gave time a name. When you walk through your own city, under the glow of street lamps, past the hum of cars and the rhythm of footsteps, you're walking through their legacy. For every brick and stone, every marketplace and temple, every signature and story, all trace their ancestry to that ancient dream beside the Tigris and Euphrates. The Sumerians showed us that civilization was not built by kings or wars, but by patience. By hands that learned to shape clay, by minds that learned to imagine futures, and by souls that believed that work done well was its own form of worship. And isn't that a comforting thought? That everything, the cities, the schools, the libraries, the laws, began with quiet, ordinary people who just wanted life to make sense. They didn't know they were making history. They were just living it. A potter shaping a vessel, a scribe tracing symbols under the morning light, a mother baking barley bread for her children. These were not grand acts of power. They were small acts of devotion to order, to peace, to the rhythm of life itself. It's easy to imagine them now, sleeping beneath the same stars that crown our sky tonight, their homes long gone, their temples buried beneath the dust of millennia. And yet, their dreams survived. You can still feel them in the alphabet on your screen, in the way your world is measured by rules and time, in the pulse of every city that refuses to sleep. They were humanity's first storytellers, first architects, first dreamers of forever. And though their language has faded, their ideas, Abi, not. So as the winds sweep through those ancient streets, as the moon drifts above the silent ziggurats, and as the last torch fades to darkness, listen. If you listen closely enough, you might still hear the faint hum of their world. The sound of sandals on sun-baked streets, the creak of a wooden door, the murmur of a temple hymn carried softly on the night breeze, and somewhere far beyond sound, the heartbeat of civilization's first dreamers. Their story reminds us that time does not truly erase. It transforms. Clay turns to dust, dust turns to soil, and from that soil, new life grows. In that way, the Sumerians are not gone. They are simply part of the world that came after, woven into every line we write, every dream we build, every question we still ask when we look to the stars. Thank you for wandering through history with me tonight. If this story helped you find some calm, leave a gentle thought in the comments below. And if you'd like to dream through more forgotten ages, don't forget to subscribe, so you'll always have another quiet journey waiting for you. Sleep well, and remember, the first dream of civilization is still dreaming through you.